The custodian said room 307 hadn't been touched in at least 4 years. It didn't show up on seating charts. It wasn't listed in the substitute teacher folders. It wasn't even on the evacuation map. But somehow, someone had the key. And on an ordinary Thursday afternoon just after third period, 3 students walked her in. One of them locked the door behind him. That sound, that click, was the last thing anyone in that hallway heard for the next 6 minutes. No adults noticed. No cameras worked. No one reported screams. Because there weren't any. Not at first. Her name was Amara Jackson, 15 years old. New to the district, transferred from another school after what the counselor described as a behavioral misunderstanding. No friends, no clubs, no record. No one knew anything, except that she kept to herself and always had her backpack close. Most students barely noticed her, but for 3 boys, she was a target. Jaden Barnes, Tyler Reese, Connor Briggs, all seniors, all athletes, all used to getting away with things. It started small, lunch tray knocked out of her hands, locker left open, harmless, if you're the one doing it. But it escalated, quickly. Because once you find someone who won't fight back, it doesn't take long before the cruelty becomes routine. And then, it stops being about a joke. It becomes a ritual. They said it was just a prank, just a dare, just boys being boys. But when it was over, one of them couldn't stand. One was missing 3 teeth, and the third had urinated on himself, from fear. Meanwhile, Amara walked out of room 307 without a scratch, without a sound, without even looking back. And yet, no police were called, no formal report filed, no disciplinary hearing, just a quiet note in the faculty group chat. All issues have been handled internally. But they hadn't been, not even close, because within 48 hours one of the boys had vanished from social media. Within 72, another tried to transfer schools. By the end of the week, all 3 were silent. No apologies, no explanations, no details. Only Amara returned to school. Same hoodie, same silence, same backpack, always zipped shut. And that's when the rumors started, that she brought something into the room that day, that it wasn't the first time, that everything she did had been planned. Carefully, deliberately, and for much longer than anyone thought. Some say she snapped. Others believe she knew exactly what she was doing. And a few, the ones who actually looked into her past, are still asking the same question today. How much damage can one teenage girl do if no one ever stops her? Because once you hear what really happened inside room 307, you'll realize those boys never had a chance. And maybe, just maybe, that was the point. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming deep dives. I've been holding this in for a long time. Not because I wanted to, but because every time I opened my mouth, people looked at me like I was the one that did something wrong. Like just telling the truth made me dangerous. But I ain't telling this story to get sympathy. I'm telling it because somebody needs to know what really happened at Oak Valley, what really happened in that classroom, and what kind of school lets boys become monsters, as long as their daddies keep writing checks. My name's Amara Jackson, 16, scholarship student, straight out of West End, miles from this shiny white brick town where everybody acts like nothing bad ever happens. But something did happen. And it wasn't just a fight. It wasn't just a misunderstanding. Somebody almost died, and they still tried to call it a misunderstanding. I remember the first day I showed up at Oak Valley, hair braided neat, uniform 2 sizes too big. Mama found it in a donation box behind the church. I ain't say nothing, just ironed it best I could. I remember how the other girls looked at me. They didn't say nothing out loud, but I saw it. That quick glance, that quiet smirk, like I was walking through their house without taking my shoes off. But it wasn't the girls I was worried about. It was the boys. Always the boys. Tyler Whitmore, Mason Greer, Kyle Benton. 3 of them. Seniors, legacy kids, Oak Valley royalty. Their parents? Big names, old money. One of them, Mason's dad, had a wing named after him on the science building. They ain't never had to fight for anything. Never been told no. Never had to explain themselves. They walked around that school like they owned it. And maybe they did. I wasn't trying to stand out. I was just trying to survive the year. Keep my head down, keep my grades up, and keep Mama from worrying. But they ain't like that. They ain't like girls saying no, or people they can't control. So they started with words. The usual stuff. You lost? What, they letting hood rats in now? Sometimes loud, sometimes whispered, just low enough to make you feel crazy. They thought it was funny. But that's how it always starts. Just enough hate to test the water. Then one day after gym, I came back to my locker, and my books were soaked in the toilet. All of them. Pages torn, some missing. My journal, gone, and taped to the inside of the locker door was a picture of me from the school website. Eyes scribbled out. I reported it. Told the office. Want to guess what they said? Boys will be boys. Maybe I misunderstood. Maybe I was too sensitive. Mr. Levins, the vice principal, told me I was responsible for keeping the peace. Told me, Amara, sometimes it's better not to poke the bear. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed quiet. I kept showing up, even when they pushed past me in the halls like I wasn't even there, because part of me believed if I just stayed strong enough, they'd get bored. They didn't. Then came that Thursday. Nobody knows why they picked that room. Maybe because it was off schedule. Maybe because they knew the cameras didn't reach that part of the building. But they waited for me after chemistry. Said coach wanted to see me. Said it was urgent. I didn't even question it. That's what kills me. I didn't even question it. They led me to room 307. The door clicked shut behind me. No windows, no desks, just stacked chairs, mop bucket in the corner. I heard the key turn. I felt my stomach drop. Mason grinned first. Kyle blocked the door. Tyler said something I'll never forget. But I'm not ready to repeat that part. All I'll say is this. They thought it would be easy. They thought I'd beg. They thought I'd fold. But they ain't know what was in my backpack. They ain't know who they locked in that room. And the part that still keeps me up at night, the part that still makes my hands shake even now, is how calm I felt. I wasn't scared. I wasn't frozen. I was ready. Because they weren't the first. And they damn sure weren't going to be the last. Now here's what nobody ever explained. Why'd 3 boys, popular, white, protected, go silent the moment they left that room? Why did the school call it a misunderstanding when Kyle needed stitches? Why did no one press charges, even when Mason's parents threatened to sue? Why did the cameras conveniently malfunction for exactly 12 minutes? And most of all, why'd they let me stay? Like they were scared to make me mad again? And this is only the beginning. Because what happened in that room wasn't just a reaction, it was a reckoning. And the reason I never said anything wasn't 'cause I was afraid. It was 'cause I knew. They'd never believe me anyway. It's hard to explain what it felt like, walking into Oak Valley that first morning. Even now I still remember the sound my shoes made on the lobby floor, like I ain't belong there, like every step echoed just a little too loud. Marble tiles, clean white walls, gold-framed photos of graduating classes I'd never be part of. Everybody in those pictures looking like they knew they'd be somebody one day. And me? I was just hoping I wouldn't get lost trying to find my homeroom. But truth is, I was already lost before I ever got there. Mama passed that summer. Heart failure. She worked 2 jobs and still couldn't afford a doctor till it was too late. One minute she was braiding my hair in the kitchen. Next thing I knew, I was alone in a silence so thick I couldn't even cry. That's the thing about grief. People think it's loud, but really it's quiet. It just sits with you, waiting. After she was gone, I got a letter. Full ride scholarship. Oak Valley Preparatory. Said I'd been nominated by a local mentor program. Said I had potential. Funny thing is, I didn't feel potential. I felt tired. But I packed what little I had, and I went. Because Mama always said, don't let where you're from stop where you're going. So I tried. First week was rough. Nobody said my name. Not teachers. Not classmates. I was you, or her, or new girl. Even when I raised my hand, I could feel them hesitating. Like they had to double check if it was okay to call on me. And the way people looked at me, not mean, not cruel, just confused, like they were trying to figure out why I was there. I remember one girl, blonde ponytail, French manicure. She leaned back in her seat and whispered, "She's on that charity program, right?" She didn't know I heard, but I did. I heard everything. They ain't know I paid attention like that. They ain't know I'd been watching people all my life, learning who they were before they even said a word. It's how I survived public school. It's how I survived foster care after Mama passed. It's how I learned to play chess. Yeah, chess. Most people didn't know that about me, that I was a state finalist by age 11, that Mama taught me on a checkered board made out of cardboard and tape. She used to say, every piece got power, even the pawn. You just got to live long enough to reach the other side. I played every day after school. Used to win tournaments with no coach, no team, no sponsor. At Oak Valley, I didn't even tell nobody at first. Wasn't trying to impress. But it didn't take long for the wrong people to notice me. That's when Tyler started smiling in my direction. Wasn't friendly, wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile you give a fly before you swat it. Tyler Whitmore, class president, varsity lacrosse, son of a state senator. He wasn't dumb. He was dangerous. Because he knew how to look innocent while twisting the knife. Always had Mason and Kyle trailing behind him like shadows. Mason, loud, arrogant, always laughing too hard at Tyler's jokes. Kyle, quieter, but watch his eyes too long and you'd start feeling nervous. Together they ran the school like they were auditioning for the next Ivy League frat. And no one dared call them out. Because they were protected. By their families. By their last names. By the silence that rich kids learn how to weaponize from birth. I kept my head down. Did my work. Got straight A's. Sat in the back. Ate lunch alone. Spent weekends facing the wall in the dorm, practicing chess moves in my mind. But even in silence, I knew they were watching me. I could feel it in the back of my neck, in the way the halls quieted when I passed, in the way somebody wrote "token" on my locker in dry erase, just faint enough that teachers could pretend they didn't see. But here's the thing. I wasn't just quiet. I was observant. And I saw things nobody else paid attention to, like how Tyler flinched whenever a teacher mentioned responsibility, or how Mason copied his papers from sophomore year archives, or how Kyle sat outside the nurse's office twice a week, gripping his stomach like he was holding something in. None of them were as solid as they looked. They just talked louder than everybody else. One day I stayed after class to organize some materials, and I overheard a teacher, Mr. Slater, old history guy, sharp as glass even though he looked half asleep most days. He was talking to another staff member, didn't know I was in the room. He said, "That girl, Amara, there's more to her than meets the eye. Don't underestimate her. She sees everything." That stuck with me, because it was the first time someone saw me, without me having to bleed for it. But by the time anyone else noticed, room 307 had already happened, and everything I'd been holding in, every bruise, every whisper, every late night wondering if I'd ever be safe anywhere, it all came out. Not in screams, not in tears, but in a moment they never expected. See, people think silence means weakness, that if you ain't fighting loud, you ain't fighting at all. But me, I learned to fight in stillness, to wait, to see the board, to make my move when they least expect it. And when I did, they ain't know what hit 'em. The hallway was quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, the kind that feels like something's about to go wrong. You know that feeling, where even the air feels like it's holding its breath. That day, last period got canceled out of nowhere. Some emergency meeting for the staff. Most of the students took it as a free pass to go home early. I was still sitting in room 307, in the back corner like I always did, going over my physics notes. I liked that room. It had these tall windows that caught the last of the afternoon sun, made the floor look gold, like the light was trying to protect something in there. I remember hearing the door open. Didn't think much of it at first, just figured somebody forgot their bag or something. But when I looked up, I saw Tyler, then Mason, then Kyle, all three of them, standing in the doorway like they owned it. And I remember this little jolt in my chest. Not fear, not yet. Just that feeling you get when you know something's off. Like when the hairs on your arm stand up, even if nobody said nothing. Tyler smiled first. That fake smile he always used when teachers were around. The kind that never touched his eyes. He said they needed help with the calculus homework. Said they figured since I was the new genius girl, I could explain it. Now let me be honest with you. I knew that was a lie the moment it left his mouth. Tyler hadn't done his own homework since freshman year. Mason probably didn't even know what class we were in. And Kyle just stood there, chewing on a toothpick like this was funny to him. But I told myself, maybe this is the olive branch. Maybe they're trying to turn a corner. So I nodded. That's all I did. Nodded. And they walked in, shut the door behind them, and locked it. That sound, that click, it echoed in my chest like a gunshot. I turned around, heart pounding now, but I kept my face steady. That's something my mama taught me a long time ago. Don't let 'em see you break. Mason pulled up a chair like it was casual. Kyle leaned against the windowsill. Tyler stayed standing, pacing behind me real slow, like a lion checking out its prey. Then the jokes started. At first, it was all that typical mess. The name-calling, the questions like, how'd someone like you even get in here? Or, they let scholarships in now? But it didn't stop there. They started talking about my clothes, my hair, my mama. And I felt my fists clench. Because you can say what you want about me, but don't bring my mama into it. Not when she ain't here to defend herself. They didn't stop. Tyler grabbed my notebook and started flipping through it, laughing like he just found a diary. Mason took my backpack and dumped it on the floor. Pencils, textbooks, my lunch, all scattered across the tile like it didn't mean nothing. And then Kyle said something I ain't never gonna forget. He said, "What are you gonna do, chess girl? Think your way out of this?" I remember feeling the burn behind my eyes, but I didn't cry. I didn't flinch. I just watched. Watched how they moved. Listened to where they stood. Counted each step between me and that locked door. My breathing slowed. I remember thinking about the queen on the chessboard. The most powerful piece. How she don't move just to move. She waits. Watches. And then, when it's time, she doesn't ask. She takes. That's when Mason stepped too close. He reached for me. And that's when I did what I had to do. I reached into my bag, calm and quiet. The way my mama used to when she pulled out her keys at night. Cautious, certain. And what I pulled out wasn't a weapon. Wasn't no knife, no pepper spray. It was my thermos. But what was inside, that's what they never saw coming. See, I used to train late. And I used to get followed sometimes. So I started carrying a mix of ammonia and dye in a sealed compartment. It wasn't lethal, but it burned. Bad. I'd made it for emergencies. Never thought I'd use it inside a classroom, but when Tyler grabbed my wrist, I twisted, popped the caps, and sprayed. He screamed first, loud, sharp. The kind that cuts through walls. Then chaos. Mason tried to grab me, slipped on my spilled lunch and slammed into the desk. Kyle rushed forward, but I swung the thermos at his face, hit him square in the jaw. He dropped, and I stood there, chest heaving, trembling, but upright. I wasn't the one crying. They were. Tyler on the floor, clutching his face. Mason groaning, trying to sit up. Kyle half conscious against the wall. And me? I just walked over to the door, unlocked it, looked down at them one last time, and left. The hallway was still quiet. Except now there were footsteps, a teacher running, shouting. Someone had heard the noise. But by the time they got there, I was gone. Gone down the stairs, out the side exit, into the cold air that hit me like truth. And I knew right then, something had changed. Not just in that room, but in me. Because I ain't the same girl who walked into room 307. That girl thought silence kept you safe. That girl believed if you just kept your head down, people would leave you alone. But me? I knew now. Silence was a cage, and I had just broken out. When I stepped out that side exit, the sky had already started to change. It was that deep blue you only see right before sundown, soft, almost purple, but heavy. Like the weight of what just happened had already settled in the air around me. I remember the sound of my footsteps on the pavement, each one loud, hollow. My hands were still trembling, not from fear anymore, from what came after fear. I didn't run. I didn't cry. I just walked. Slow, steady, like my body knew what my mind hadn't caught up to yet. Something big had just happened, and it wasn't over. By the time I made it down the hill behind the school, I could already hear the sirens in the distance. Faint at first, but coming fast. And inside me, something shifted. A strange calm. Like I'd just survived something I wasn't supposed to. But the cost hadn't shown up yet. I walked home that day like I was in a dream. Didn't check my phone. Didn't speak to nobody. Just went inside, sat at the kitchen table, and stared at the floor. I waited for the knock. It came 3 hours later. A soft knock, then louder. Voices. Police. A counselor. A man in a blue tie who said he was with the district. They didn't barge in. They didn't yell. They were careful, like I was a lit match. At the station, they asked questions. Lots of them, over and over. Same ones, just different voices. And I answered the same way each time. I told them I was in the classroom alone. That the boys came in. That they locked the door. That they went through my things, pushed me, threatened me. That I defended myself. I said those words real clear. I defended myself. They wrote it down. But I could see it on their faces. They didn't know what to do with that. See, when someone like me fights back, it don't look like defense to them. It looks like defiance. Like danger. They released me that night, but they didn't say much. Just told me not to speak to anyone until they reviewed everything. By the next morning, the school was already trying to rewrite the story. Tyler had a concussion. His eye was swollen shut. They said he might have permanent damage to one of his tear ducts. Kyle had scratches on his arms and a fractured rib. Mason, they found him 2 hours later hiding in the boiler room, shaken, rambling about how I just snapped. And me? I showed up the next day with a clean shirt and my hair pulled back. I walked through the halls like a ghost. Kids moved out the way. Some stared, some whispered. Most just watched, like they were waiting for me to explode. Oak Valley tried to keep it quiet. No announcement, no assembly. Just a counselor in every classroom the next morning and security guards stationed near the stairwells. But kids talk. Parents talk louder. By the third day, the news vans had started parking outside the school gates. Black girl brutalizes classmates, or fights back. That was the headline. The one that went viral. They showed pictures of the boys in their football uniforms. Smiling, clean cut, homecoming kings. They didn't show me. Not until someone leaked a photo from the security camera. A still frame of me standing near the door, my back straight, the thermos in my hand. No context, just that one image. They made it look like I was the threat. But what they didn't say, what they conveniently left out, was that the key camera from inside room 307, it was erased. Gone. System malfunction, they said. Just that one feed. Every other angle in the building worked fine. That's when I knew. This wasn't just about 3 boys who thought they could corner a girl and walk away without consequence. This was bigger. This was about silence, control, reputation. Oak Valley had a brand to protect, and I didn't fit it. Word started getting around that I'd trained for this, that I was some kind of martial arts prodigy, that I'd snapped because I couldn't handle the pressure. There were even whispers that I had help, that someone else had been in the room and I was covering for them. All lies, all distractions. I started noticing who believed me and who didn't. A janitor left a post-it note on my locker one morning. It just said, "I heard what really happened. Keep your head." A girl from the grade below me avoided me in the halls, but I caught her watching me, eyes wide, like she wanted to say something but didn't know how. One of the counselors pulled me aside and said, "You don't have to carry this alone." But she didn't say it in front of anyone, and nobody put it in writing, because the truth was, nobody wanted this mess. Not the parents, not the school, and especially not the boys' families, the ones with plaques on the gym walls with their names on the donor list. They wanted it gone. So they started pressing. First, they told me I could step away for a few weeks, that it might be healthier for me to take some space. When I said no, they started hinting that my scholarship might be reevaluated. Then one morning I came in and found my locker cleared out. No warning, just empty. They said it was a misunderstanding, but that was the moment I realized this wasn't going to be a fair fight. So I started documenting every note, every message, every face that turned away. Because if they were going to erase me, I was going to leave a trail. I began writing everything down, not just the facts, but how it felt. The loneliness, the gaslighting, the way my name became a cautionary tale. I kept showing up, to every class, every meeting. I sat in the front row, not because I wanted to, but because they wanted me to disappear, and I wasn't going to give them that. I'd walk past parents in the parking lot who'd pull their kids closer. I'd hear my name in whispers, feel the stares on my back during lunch, but I held my head up, even when it felt like I was drowning. Because here's what they don't teach you in those perfect, polished schools with marble floors and branded banners. Survival ain't about being liked. It's about knowing who you are, when the whole world's trying to tell you different. And I knew who I was. I was the girl who walked out of room 307, and I didn't need their permission to exist. I used to think staying quiet made me safer, that if I just kept my head down, worked harder than everybody else, stayed small, I'd be left alone. But Oak Valley didn't work like that. There, silence was an invitation, and I learned, the hard way, that being quiet in a place like that only made you invisible when it mattered, and suspicious when you finally spoke up. The thing is, this ain't a story about a girl who snapped. This is a story about what happens when the people who are supposed to protect you turn their backs, again and again, and expect you to thank them for it. 2 weeks before that day in room 307, I filed a report. Not with the front desk lady, not with my homeroom teacher. I walked into the counselor's office, sat in that fake leather chair with the squeaky armrest, and told the truth. I told her Kyle had followed me into the library stairwell and called me out my name. Said things I won't repeat now, things that stuck to me like grease. I told her Tyler had taken a picture of me while I was eating lunch alone, and by the end of the day it was in a group chat with some caption that made half the girls in school laugh when I walked by. I told her Mason had waited outside the bathroom for me once, and said, real low, "Scholarships don't cover everything." I told her I was scared, that I couldn't focus, that I was starting to feel like maybe they wanted me to leave. She looked at me the way people do when they're listening, but not really hearing. She said, "That sounds serious, Amara, we'll look into it." Then she folded up my paper, slid it into a manila folder and locked it in her desk. And that was it. No follow-up, no calls home, no action. I found out later, they never even told the principal. So when folks ask me if I planned it, I tell them this. Yeah, I planned something. But it wasn't revenge. It was exposure. The idea came to me during chess practice. Funny, right? A game where every piece moves with purpose. Where silence ain't weakness, it's patience. Where the smallest move at the right time can unravel everything. I started keeping notes, not just of their behavior, but of their patterns. Where they stood in the halls, who they laughed with, what set them off. I started seeing them like chess pieces, predictable, fragile under pressure. And I called that page in my notebook, Endgame. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because I needed to prove what nobody believed, that they weren't just playing around. They were hunting me. So I set the board. I knew Mason would take the bait first. He always needed to impress the others. I let him overhear I'd be alone after last period, finishing a take-home exam. I knew Kyle wouldn't pass up a chance to corner me without cameras. And I knew Tyler. He followed power, wherever it went. I hit record on my phone before they even walked in. That part I didn't plan to go public. It was just for me. Insurance. A voice in the dark when mine got drowned out. You ever hear your own fear played back to you? I did. The audio came out after everything else it wasn't supposed to. But when the investigation stalled, when they tried to paint me as unstable, someone, I still don't know who, leaked it to the press. You could hear them laughing. You could hear Kyle say, "What's the matter, little scholarship, gonna cry?" You could hear the shove, the silence, then the sound of my thermos hitting the floor. You could hear my voice shake, but you could also hear me say, "Don't touch me again." And after that, the panic, the yelling, the sounds of a room where control flipped like a switch. But it wasn't until the court unsealed the complaint, my report, filed and ignored, that things really changed. Suddenly, folks started switching sides. Not because they believed me, but because they didn't want to be on the wrong side of the story. That's when they found the notebook. My endgame. They said it looked like a plan, like a manifesto, like evidence. But they didn't read the notes for what they were. Survival strategy. I didn't write down ways to hurt anybody. I wrote down how to stay safe. Which exits to use, which teachers would actually step in, which students might speak up. It wasn't a plan to fight. It was a map out of hell. And yet somehow, I became the villain in their story. The girl who plotted. The girl who set a trap. The threat. Even when the truth stood right there in front of them, clear as day. My father broke down the day he heard the audio. He sat at the kitchen table, holding that tiny phone in his shaking hand, tears pouring down his face. He said, "She didn't want revenge. She just wanted them to stop." And he was right. That's all I ever wanted. I didn't want them punished. I wanted to be left alone. But when you ask to be left alone in a world that feeds off silence, they make you fight for your peace. The town split. Some folks called me brave, said I stood up for girls who never got the chance. Others said I was calculated, dangerous, that I set a trap, that I didn't belong here in the first place. Teachers I'd known all year stopped looking me in the eye. Emails went unanswered. Old friends got quiet. But something else happened too. A mother I'd never met pulled me aside at the grocery store, whispered, "Thank you." A boy from another school messaged me. "I saw what they did. You were right to fight." Girls I barely knew started sitting near me at lunch. One even said, "I thought I was crazy until I heard your story." I wasn't alone anymore. I wasn't silent, and for the first time in a long time, that felt like power. After everything, the hearings, the articles, the messages, the rumors that still whispered behind my back like wind through cracked doors, I thought that was it. That I'd told the truth, stood my ground, and somehow walked away with what little of myself I had left. But the truth doesn't settle like that. It lingers. It waits. And sometimes, it speaks back. 3 months after I left Oak Valley, after I packed up my uniform, returned my laptop, and sat quietly in that transfer counselor's office while they tried to sound supportive without saying too much, I got an email, no subject line, Just one sentence in the body. He's asking if you'd read it. Attached was a video. It was Mason. Sitting in what looked like his bedroom. White walls, the old-school varsity jacket hanging on the chair behind him like some kind of ghost. He looked thinner. Eyes heavy. Voice low. He said he wasn't asking for forgiveness. Said he didn't deserve it. Said he'd been part of something ugly. Something he didn't know how to stop once it started. Said the silence had eaten at him since that day in room 307. But then he said something that stopped me cold. She saved me, he said, not because I deserve saving, but because she refused to let us destroy her. And that was the twist none of them saw coming. I wasn't the weapon they feared. I was the mirror. I held up everything they didn't want to see about themselves and forced them to look. That apology video went viral. A teacher from Oak Valley reposted it. Then someone clipped it for TikTok. By the time I checked again, it had over 1 million views. Some people called it brave. Others said it was too late. Some accused him of trying to save his image before graduation. But I didn't care about any of that. All I could think was, he said it out loud. He named it. And sometimes naming a thing is the first step to breaking its grip. I watched the whole video twice. Then I closed my laptop, walked outside, sat on the porch for a long time with the sun on my face. I didn't cry. Not then. I just exhaled. Like something I'd been carrying in my chest for months finally cracked open and let go. And that's when I knew I wasn't going back. I transferred to a school that didn't have a dress code designed to shrink you, where the teachers didn't assume quiet meant weak, where no one smirked when I said I wanted to study law one day. But more than that, I started talking. At first it was just voice notes. Me recording pieces of the story I couldn't say out loud to anyone else. Then it became something more. A podcast. It wasn't fancy. Just me, my phone, and the truth. Each episode I told a story. Not just mine, but others who'd messaged me. Teens who'd been humiliated in classrooms. Girls who got suspended for defending themselves. Boys who'd been silenced because speaking up didn't match the version of masculinity their school sold them. And slowly, something shifted. Not in the world. The world's too big for that. But in me. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was building. A space, a voice, a reminder. But just when I started to believe the worst was behind me. One night, I'm editing an episode in my bedroom. Late, quiet. The soft hum of my laptop, the ceiling fan above ticking like a slow heartbeat, and my phone buzzes. Unknown number, no name, just a message. You were never supposed to win. That moment, it chilled something in me. Like a shadow pressed its hand against the window but didn't come inside. I didn't respond. Didn't tell anyone. I just sat there, staring at that screen, trying to decide if it was a threat or just someone trying to pull me back into a game I already left. Either way, it didn't matter. Because the truth is, I did win. Not the kind of win that ends in trophies or claps, but the kind that happens quietly. When you decide you're done shrinking for other people's comfort. When you speak, even when your voice shakes. Was it justice? No. Justice would have meant they listened the first time. Justice would have meant I didn't have to record my own assault to be believed, but it was survival. And sometimes that's enough to start with. They say the story's over, that I moved on, that what happened at Oak Valley is just a memory now. But here's what they don't understand. When a girl stands up to the worst kind of cruelty, she doesn't walk away unchanged. She carries it. In her bones. In her breath. In every new space she enters, scanning for the next fight before it finds her. The real question was never, did she do it? The question was, would they have believed her if she hadn't bled for it? And now that the dust has settled, I still wonder, did anything really change? Or did we all just get better at pretending? Because behind every classroom door, behind every perfect photo and polished hallway, There's another girl. Another voice. So now you know. You know about the hallway that went silent. You know what happened behind that locked door. You know about the blood, the notebook, the screams. And you know I survived it. But survival's just the start. Nobody tells you that part. See, I carried what happened in room 307 like a second spine, something holding me up, but also pressing down. There are days when I feel strong, and there are days when I wonder if I'll ever stop flinching at the sound of boys laughing too loud behind me. And I ask myself all the time, if I had the chance to go back, would I do it the same way? Would I still pull out that recorder? Would I still keep my voice calm while theirs got ugly? Would I still swing when the door slammed shut behind me? And more than that, what would you have done? If it was you in that room, all eyes on you mocking, closing in, would you have folded, fought, planned every move like a chessboard and prayed your story wouldn't get erased before it ever got heard? Or would you have done nothing? Because that's what the world tells people like us to do. Stay quiet, stay small, stay grateful. But I wasn't built for silence, not anymore. And if I had to bleed just to be believed, then so be it. I didn't go looking for justice. I went looking for breath. And in the end, I found both, in pieces. So now I'm handing this story to you, not just as something to watch, but as something to carry, to weigh, to question. What would you have done in room 307? Was I justified or did I cross a line? And what even is a line when nobody sees you until you're backed against the wall? Drop your thoughts below. I'm listening, and I hope, for once, so is everybody else. Because this ain't just about Oak Valley. This ain't just about me. It's about every hallway that echoes with the things we're too afraid to say out loud. And if this story gripped you, if it left you thinking about what you'd do when the world stops pretending to protect you, then wait till you hear what happened to Eli. One detention, one teacher who swore he walked him to the door. And after that, nothing. No goodbye, no trace. Just a name that no one dares speak. Like if they keep their mouths shut, maybe it never happened. But trust me, it did. And that story? That one's next. Subscribe, because we're not done yet. This world's got more shadows than light, and somebody's got to hold the flashlight, another fight waiting to be named.